All of your local and state news in one place. Tune into The District on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Welcome back to The District. It is now, our second episode?
Second or third, Taylor, whatever it is. It's not our first time here in the WHIP recording booth. So once again, The District covers all things local politics, going to the city level, to state specifically. But, here on WHIP, we do a lot of coverage when it comes to nationwide stuff. But, the best part of this podcast is it's hyper-local, talking about issues here at Temple University, City of Philadelphia, and the state as well. But one thing we didn't do yet, we didn't introduce our names once again. So this is John Cole.
And this is Taylor Allen.
So there we go. And this week, an eventful one in the political realm as we get so close to Election Day. We are less than 3 weeks away. All three presidential debates are in the past. So we are in the home stretch, so to speak, of this cycle. And the nation actually has their eyes on Pennsylvania, not only for the presidential race, although it seems like it's going more towards Hillary according to recent polling, but the Senate race in the state of Pennsylvania between incumbent junior Senator Pat Toomey against Democratic challenger Katie McGinty. It's been the most expensive race.
The most expensive one, yes. And it's actually, it hasn't gotten quote-unquote nasty.
But not as, in comparison to the national election, it's definitely not in the same league. But it's so crucial to the Senate because if the Democrats are able to flip that seat, a lot of speculation is that many pundits look at this year and think, the Democrats have a real chance at possibly taking the Senate back. And that would be an absolute huge year for the Democrats if they could win the White House and the Senate. That's a huge victory for the Democrats. But one of the states they think they need to flip if they're going to win is Pennsylvania. But that debate just happened a couple days ago on Monday. And they have one more coming up at Temple University as well next week. But anyway, Taylor, I want to get into your takeaways of this first debate between Pat Toomey and Katie McGinty.
Well, their main things that I took away was their direct contrast. Contrast on climate change. McGinty believes in climate change, as most Democrats do. She thinks that you can actually create jobs with dealing with climate change by actually focusing on manufacturing on green energy, which is one of the biggest criticisms people have when it comes to protecting and having laws to regulate businesses when it comes to climate change. Because the biggest criticism is that it takes away jobs. Toomey, on the other hand, actually does admit that he does believe in global warming and that it is a problem. However, he stated that he doesn't think human activity is the reason behind it, and he thinks that McGinty's plan, as well as the Democrats' plan, will ultimately ruin the economy.
And that's something that is a message for Toomey that he wants to hammer home into certain industrial parts of the state that think their jobs have been robbed of them because of the economy changing and the world changing, thinking that we're in this post-industrial era in which, jobs in coal and other things that are kind of going to the wayside to go to clean energy and basically just a different economy. And that's a base that the Republicans are really trying to hold on to because if they're to lose some of those base, though, those that work in those specific industries that are going by the wayside, if they lose that base, that makes it that much tougher for them to win Pennsylvania. So that's the stark contrast between not only both candidates, but both parties as a whole.
Both parties. I just thought it was very interesting that Toomey at all said that, he thought global warming was a problem. I thought that was pretty progressive for him to even state.
Well, it's funny because when we've watched the presidential debates, Taylor, Donald Trump, when Hillary Clinton made the charge that Donald Trump believes global warming is a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese, people laughed, but Donald Trump has a tweet from 2012 stating the similar sentiment, maybe not word for word, but paraphrasing that he believed that global warming is a hoax. So you're right, there are those in the Republican Party that don't believe in global warming, and for Toomey to acknowledge it's real, but maybe having different outlook on it, there's a stark contrast there, but I think it's noteworthy that Toomey isn't exactly saying it's not happening, it's not real, forget about it. I think that is moved. I think it's a comment of his to kind of move to the middle, because in this election, this whole time he's tried to come off as the more independent politician. Right. In recent ads, he's talked about someone has to stand up in Washington to the president or whoever if you don't agree with them.
Right.
Because Senator Toomey is still yet to endorse Donald Trump. His candidate's nominee or party's nominee. Excuse me, but it's been that late in the game where I think Toomey's again trying to appeal to the moderate voters, and I think that's,
he hasn't formally endorsed Donald Trump, but he also has not said that he wouldn't either.
Correct. Yes.
He's been standing very, very. He's been shying away from that question for a while.
Yeah, I guarantee Senator Pat Toomey would be much more happy if it were any of the other Republicans that were running right now, because I guarantee by now he would have endorsed them. And it's interesting, Taylor, Senator Pat Toomey in the primary voted for Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has since endorsed Donald Trump, although Cruz was seen as the face of the Never Trump movement.
Well, yeah.
He came around and eventually endorsed him. So it's funny that you have a guy who so vehemently said Donald Trump couldn't be president. Ted Cruz had some very harsh remarks for Mr. Trump when his campaign ended, calling him a liar and really just attacked him, kind of like in a scorched earth, statement saying that he can't be president. And then next thing you know, later on he does eventually endorse him. So it's interesting to see that Toomey's gone this far, and we're less than 3 weeks away. He's still yet to endorse him. And I guess last night was the last presidential debate. Do you think Toomey end up endorsing her now?
I think he'll stay silent until the race is over.
Yeah.
I really don't think there's any. I don't. This late in the game, I don't think he'll say anything.
And I'm curious if this politically calculated move from him, I wonder if it's going to pay off or not, because we've seen various polls where at a certain point in time, Donald Trump was rather competitive in Pennsylvania, but I think recent polling has shown that it looks like Hillary Clinton's pulling a bit away. Yeah. So maybe this ultimately will turn out to be good for Senator Toomey. But there's quite a few Donald Trump supporters, I'll tell you, Taylor, don't like Pat Toomey. Myself, Ryan Frischella, and Ryan Goodwin of WHIP covered a Donald Trump rally in Chester. So a couple weeks ago, if not a month ago.
Okay.
And we went on a Thursday night, and we went out in the crowd, and we talked to the supporters saying, what do you think of Pat Toomey? And they were like, we don't like him because he would not endorse their nominee. So you have this divide between, so that some of the diehard Trump supporters won't vote for him. And right now, I guess his plea, he's not worried about them. He's more so worried about getting those moderate, independent voters over.
I think it's smarter in Pennsylvania anyway to go for the moderate people.
I agree.
From a political standpoint, I think that is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's talk into some other issues that were discussed in the debate just a couple days ago. I know you wanted to touch on policing as well.
Yeah, McGinty straight up said that she thinks that more community members should police their own communities. She thinks they would have more sensitivity to the people who are among the community, less implicit bias towards the people within that community. Toomey kind of sidestepped this one. He said that I think it's always a good thing for people to be mindful of other people in their community. However, he said he does not want the rhetoric of police officers being inherently racist or having certain biases. He went very much on the edge of saying, yes, there are some recent events that were horrible, but please do not think that all police officers are like this.
Exactly, and it's been actually one of the more interesting aspects of this campaign, Taylor. The fight for the police vote. Toomey's gotten quite a few endorsements from those in the law enforcement community, but Katie McGinty has made it a point to say, look, my father was a Philadelphia police officer.
She did make a point to say that.
Yeah. And it's been one of the parts of the campaign where Toomey has touted the fact that he has the backing of several law enforcements, and that's something he's writing home about. And, it's an endorsement that he's taking pride in. But Katie McGinty is making the point that, look, I understand, according to her, she understands some of these issues because her own father is a police officer. So she recognizes, in her words, the good work that police do, but she believes that there are certain things that would ultimately make the police force and law enforcement more efficient. And when you mention community policing, that's one of the areas where they do contrast.
I guess I just don't even like the idea of the word policing when it comes to community, at least. I have a problem with people thinking that certain communities just need policing, period. I think it should be a wide range of if there's a problem, you then go to the community. I don't think you should be overlooking certain communities.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, that could be me nitpicking certain words, but I guess I just don't like that language.
No, I hear what you're saying there, and that's I think a good amount of people share that same sentiment, Taylor. So you're definitely not alone in that one, and that's one of those issues where I'm curious to see when it comes down to Election Day, will McGinty be able to pull in some of these police officers, although she's not getting the police officer endorsement since her dad was a Philadelphia police officer. I wonder if that can help her out there on Election Day, just 19 days away. But anyway, there was one more issue specifically you wanted to touch on about the debate between McGinty and Toomey, and that was about the Affordable Care Act.
Essentially, McGinty wants the Affordable Care Act. She thinks it's a good thing. However, she did make a stipulation that drug prices should be regulated and try to keep them low, which I don't necessarily think that's a really big thing to ask. Toomey, on the other side, thinks it's a complete failure, as most of his party does.
Correct.
And he would like a more market-based solution, which, honestly, that's not that shocking, and I don't really think that's like the worst thing in the world for him to ask. Like as him trying to be a moderate, that's not the worst thing you could have said.
Yeah. Well, I think almost everyone in the Republican Party has condemned Obamacare, as it's been known now, and they want to. It's been a rallying cry for the party to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Yes.
And we've even seen certain Democrats not infatuated with Obamacare. We've even seen Hillary Clinton talk about it's done a lot of good, but it needs to be tweaked at least. Yeah. McGinty kind of shares the same sentiment that Secretary Hillary Clinton does, in which they don't want to repeal it and replace it, but they want to at least tweak it or change it just a bit because they think there are flaws in it, that they think it's working, but they would like to see it changed up just a bit. And I wonder, I'd love to look up statistics, and eventually we will. In the polls, we'll see what the people of Pennsylvania think about Obamacare, because we know this is a topic that severely divides both parties. This is one of those wedge issues that when you're on one side, if you're ultimately for Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, most likely you're a Democrat. Not necessarily, but most likely. And same thing, and if you're probably against Obamacare, there's a good chance you're a Republican. So it's one of those wedge issues that both candidates had to bring up on the debate stage on Monday.
Mm-hmm. But I think what we should say, that's something that does bring us together. I think no matter where you're on the spectrums, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I think everyone can agree that it needs to be tweaked. Healthcare is definitely something that needs to be addressed, and I think both parties can agree that there's still reform that needs to be done. I don't think anyone is saying that the healthcare is perfect right now, and I don't think anyone is saying that Obamacare is perfect right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's an excellent point. And that was some of the big things we took away from the debate. Myself and Ryan Frischella interviewed Jonathan Tamaria, the Philadelphia Inquirer, just yesterday about the debate between McGinty and Toomey. And like he mentioned, I don't think it's going to move the needle much, the debate, because it's not like it's getting the biggest audiences. But the thing is, it's good to see them debate twice. We've seen one so far, and the next one, it's happening right here in our own backyard at Temple University. So hopefully, hopefully we get a chance to go to it, Taylor. I'm hoping to try to get to it. But anyway, we talk about the school we're at. Luckily, we're in. I mean, depends how you want to look at it. We're still in classes, and some people may be happy about that. Some people may not be. But guess what? There's about 14 state schools right now that are not. Taylor, go into it.
Yeah, 14 state schools, campuses including Westchester, East Stroudsburg, Bloomsburg, California, Cheney, Clarion, Edinburgh, just to name a few, have officially gone on strike. And starting yesterday, classes have been canceled, a lot of them, because the faculty have gone on strike. They did not like the contract that was between the system of higher education and the union. Most of the disputes is over health care coverage and wages, and they just said, you know what, we're done. They're now on strike. They have been picketing since yesterday, and even some students have been a part of it. About 100,000 students are without an education right now.
And so this is something that I think we could have seen coming just a couple of weeks ago. We heard the murmurs that nothing would get accomplished, and the strike was not imminent, but I think a lot of people are not shocked that this is happening right now. Yeah. But I guess now the biggest topic of conversation for it going forward is going to be, how long will this last? And that's something we're going to have to monitor for a while. And how is it going to affect, specifically, I have friends that are at schools that are affected by this. I have quite a few friends at Westchester, some at Bloomsburg, and right now there are some of those schools that are currently, teachers are on strike. And you wonder, if you're a senior like myself, is this going to affect graduation whatsoever? This is one of those things where I don't know specifically, but I guess the longer they protest, that'll we'll have to talk about that. And I'm also interested to see, whenever they do come to an agreement, whenever they agree and shake hands and they get back to work, I wonder how many of the teachers will be satisfied, or will they in a sense succumb just to get back to school, or are they going to get a deal that they find suited for them? I
mean, this is pure speculation, but I know for a fact that the faculty did not want to strike. That is the reason they announced that it was going to happen. They were like, look, if you don't abide by this, we will strike. The faculty want a paycheck. They want to educate students. Like, that is their job. There is their occupation. They don't really want to do this. Yeah. So because of this, I mean, there is no definite time where the strike will end, but I feel like the most probable thing that will happen is that they will have to succumb to some agreement. Will the will the system of higher education probably budge a little bit? Yes, but I don't see how it will be all the way to their benefit, especially when it's about healthcare benefits.
And I want you to can you also read off the schools currently affected by this right now?
Yes, it's Westchester, East Stroudsburg, Bloomsburg, California, Cheney, Clarion, Edenborough, Indiana, Kutztown, Lock Haven, Mansfield, Millersville, Shippensburg, and Slippery.
And that's quite a few. Again, there's a lot of people that seek state schools, Taylor, because it's cheaper and it's more affordable. And why not? If, we all know that college isn't the cheapest thing out there. And luckily here at Temple University, I think we're pretty blessed that this isn't the most expensive education in relation to other universities. But state schools are sought after because, look, it's more affordable. And you have 14 of them, I believe, right now, that are students are being affected by this, and as well, of course, the faculty and teachers. And I guess you just wonder how long will this last, and when it ends, I guess how they will how it's going to affect the universities moving forward.
Two schools that are not a part of this, obviously, are Temple University and Penn State, and it's to note that we are two of the biggest schools in biggest state schools in Pennsylvania, and we do.
Is Pitt private? Do you know?
Pitt is not private, but it is definitely the most expensive school, in Pennsylvania for the average resident.
Yeah, and Pitt's a very good education, but they're also not on strike right now. So Pitt, likewise with Temple and Penn State, big schools that I guess they have funding from the state.
Yeah, they get additional funding because they're so big.
Exactly.
But certain schools like Cheney, when you're tiny, you obviously get less funding. And less funding equals less wages for your faculty.
Yeah, and so we'll continue to monitor that moving forward. And I know the third topic I wanted to talk about was specifically Philadelphia-based. Taylor, I know you're not from Philly, but you live here, for school you're here now. And I've lived in this city my whole life and go to college here. So specifically, the problems Philadelphia faces. And there was a poll recently, and I want you to get into it because I think it's a really interesting topic.
The Pew Charitable Trust released a survey today, actually, saying that according to Philadelphians, the biggest threat to them is public safety. This is notable is because for the past several years, the number one concern used to be education. And now 44% of people are concerned with public safety, 20% are only concerned with education, and 14% are concerned with the economy. Roughly only 1,000 people were surveyed, so I think we should put that into account.
Yeah, it's not the biggest sample size, but still.
That's very notable. What is also notable is that the surveyors did not ask why specifically that they thought public safety was the biggest concern. However, Mayor Kenney was asked about this, and he said that he thinks it's because of the national climate right now and how much violent crime is reported, especially with the media and the press.
I could definitely see that. And I think around the time of the DNC, a lot of people were expecting huge protest riots and such.
That's true.
Where it really didn't happen, actually, in Philly. I think people were expecting for the worst, kind of. One of those things where people hope for the best, expect for the worst. I think people were expecting Philadelphia to be a hotbed for rioting and protests during the DNC, but it really didn't happen. But I think it's worth noting that this is an issue where when you're in a big city like Philadelphia and all the big cities in America, crime is one of those issues, and public safety are one of the issues that are on the forefront for every major city.
Crime is supposed to happen. Not supposed to happen, but you expect it in a bigger city. Like, that's never shocking to hear that there's a bigger crime rate in, let's say, New York City than there is in Poughkeepsie, New York.
You're exactly right, Taylor. And it's one of those, I guess, trade-offs that when you move to a big city, it's not that you're giving up your freedom of safety. Not that you shouldn't feel safe in Philly, because I feel safe here. But there are certain pockets of Philadelphia where the crime rates are unfortunately higher. And I think it's just a trade-off thing, like you mentioned, that when you're going to move into a bigger city, I think you're willing to acknowledge that maybe you may not be as safe. And I find it fascinating that, like you said, for a while it was education. That was on the minds of most people in Philadelphia. And I wonder if education maybe isn't as much on the forefront now because Mayor Jim Kenney recently, we know a big part of his campaign when he ran for mayor was to try to get universal pre-K. Well, that happened, remains to be seen. But the point is, it's being addressed, I guess. So maybe people are happy that it's somewhat being addressed in a certain light, that maybe it'll quell some of the doubts, and maybe people are thinking, all right, we're starting to address education. It's a step in the right direction to some. May think that. But then the question is, how are they going to address public safety? Because in recent memory, I don't know really any laws or I guess anything too noteworthy that has been specifically Philadelphia based that has dealt with public safety.
Well, according to Philadelphia crime statistics, within the last year, murder rate has gone up about 4%, but all other crimes have gone down, like robbery and theft of that kind. So overall, crime has been coming down. Although specifically the violent crime has gone up by 4%. They didn't actually ask, they didn't say specifically why that is, but it is something notable, and maybe that did influence the survey.
And I'm curious that, again, you mentioned it was only 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So it's not the biggest sample size, but it's still noteworthy that, 1,000 people in Philadelphia, there's only, not only, but 1.5 million approximately. So it's noteworthy that we have, and that public safety was number one. And I think it's noteworthy because how big of a margin. That's specifically what caught my attention, that it was 44% of people surveyed said that. And I think what was next was education with 20%.
Yes, education.
So it was more than double the next topic. So it seems to be a big issue in Philadelphia. And I guess moving forward in the Kenny administration, at least in his first term, we'll see if he gets a second, but I think any betting man would probably tell you he'll get a second term. Will he try to address this in a certain way? And if so, how would he go about it?
Yeah, like what would be his platform? What would he say? Yeah,
would this be a gun issue? Would this be a campaign of some sort for something else? A public safety one? I think that would be something really interesting to move forward, because if the polls in the next couple of years, let's say they keep doing more and more surveys and concern for public safety keeps going up, I'm sure government's going to be forced to address this in some way or manner. But anyway, so that was Philadelphia based. The fourth topic I know we wanted to talk about deals with the Pennsylvania Senate. Yeah. And I know this is also dealing with the police force, so...
Yeah, speaking of police force and dealing with crime of some sort, the PA Senate okayed a wider use of police body cameras while simultaneously limiting the access of the public to obtain the footage on these cameras. So, in a sense, pretty much, the Senate approved a measure that would allow more police officers to wear body cameras in public and in private, it doesn't matter. But they would severely limit public access to any of the recordings. This means that the public would need to get permission, go through several hoops to obtain this, and they also need to identify each officer before they would even see the footage. So they would need to know, they would literally ask, okay, I want to see this footage, and in addition to that, I'm going to tell you who was in the footage so I know exactly what video I want to see.
And it's noteworthy that the Congress in Pennsylvania, you have the House of Representatives and the Senate, controlled by Republicans right now, the legislator. Although Pennsylvania has a Democratic governor in Tom Wolf, he himself and the state government have had, they've been at odds quite a bit in his term so far, because two completely different ideologies, two different points of view. But it's noteworthy that this was passed in a Republican-controlled chamber 45 to 5. Don't you think that's pretty noteworthy that, it seems like the general consensus agreed to this bill?
So, okay. I don't know. I don't know if it's productive, though. I mean, you're saying you can have body cameras, which so you can see everyone, but you're limiting the access. So what is the point of a body camera?
I'm curious, though, is this maybe just a minor step? Is this leading to something greater? And is this maybe like a baby step type thing where, in the interim, they're trying this out, and if they find there's success with it, maybe they'll go on to maybe slash the limited access and go full forward with it? Because I know there are those out there that don't want body cameras on police officers, period, and there's some that think it's absolutely mandatory that they do. So maybe they're trying to walk the fine line of not making everyone angry.
That's true.
If they want to do just full on embrace the body cameras and not limit the access, I think there are those that may be turned off and think, how are you going to go for this full, all at once? Instead, I think they're taking the approach of we'll take it step by step, and if they find it successful, maybe those who are staunch critics of it will start to scale back, and maybe they will embrace it even one day.
I agree that this is a step because, even months ago, people outwardly said that there should be no body cameras at all. And
certain people will keep that sentiment.
But at least this, I guess it keeps everyone happy to a degree.
Yeah, it's like there's a saying, slow motion is better than no motion. You may not, to those who feel very passionately about this, thinking police officers should have body cameras, they're probably not thrilled with this, but they have to realize for them it's progress, and as well for those who are opponents of it, maybe they're not happy that this is going to happen. But the thing is, the access is still limited. So maybe they're not as upset as they would have been. So it was like one of those compromises, something we don't see in the government often as a compromise. So rarely do we see something going to the middle. No, it's one of those things where not everyone's going to be happy. You can't please everyone.
That's true.
But as long as you can please maybe a majority of it is very important.
It should be noted this is not law yet. It'll be reviewed in the House like within the next week or so. But they don't know at all if it will even be passed.
But I think with you,
I mean, I think so. For it to be 45-5, I mean,
It's-
almost everyone agreed on it, so
yeah.
I don't see why it wouldn't.
exactly. And any other things that would worth mentioning? You talked about did you mention the fees yet? Possibly for this for the body cameras. I believe what the bill would require anyone seeking access to the body cameras to identify every person in it. You said
You have to identify every person who you think is doing any wrongdoing, and for you to obtain all that, it's a $250 fee.
okay.
So
Gotcha.
again,
yeah.
more hoops and fees for you to do to access these. So
Okay.
I mean, it's a step.
I think it's something we're going to be monitoring for a while, Taylor, because I think this is just one of those stories. It's just the beginning. I don't see the topics about body cameras going away anytime soon. I think
not anytime soon.
as we move forward, I think we're going to see it implemented in more states and cities, and we're going to see just the results. If people are happy with it or not happy with it, we're going to see ultimately moving forward. But the last topic of the day we wanted to discuss is specifically Temple-based, and this is not a pretty sight going on here at Temple University. Myself and Ryan Frischella talked to two people from the Temple News yesterday about what the specific issue going on here at Temple, and I want you to, because I know you wanted to talk about this thing. We have to talk about it.
we have to talk about it. Bringing it really back home. Former provost Hailong Dai is now suing former President Neil Theobald for libel and slander. If you remember back in June, Hailong Dai was fired, but on the same day that he was fired, it was revealed that $22 million in the financial aid section of Temple University had gone missing. They did not say the reasoning for Hailong Dai's firing, but it was suspect that the two things happened on the same day.
Yeah, and just recently Temple now has, a full-time, well, it's no longer the acting president, but now Temple has officially a president as well. So a lot of change in the past year or so at Temple. And this specific story is going to be one that Temple News and ourselves here at WHIP will cover, because when anyone gets accused of libel and slander, especially someone who was a former president of your university,
yes,
that's a big issue. Because if he's found, now again, we'll see specifically what he thought was libel and what was slander. That remains to be seen. But
yes. Well, because the case is ongoing, I know Hailong Dai is not saying anything, and I highly doubt that Neil Theobald would either. But I think it is noted that both of them were fired. Both of them were, because this is a big deal. $22 million doesn't just slip through the cracks. What happened to that money? We don't know.
Yeah, you better hope it doesn't slip through the cracks. And I'm just curious to see what type of, first off, how long will this be in the news for? Specifically here at Temple, we're going to be covering this for quite some time. And as well, what will they come to a conclusion with? Will they find him guilty? Will they not? I think, like I mentioned, I hate to say it, to be too repetitive, but it's one of those stories that it's just the beginning.
It is absolutely just the beginning.
We're definitely not at the end of it right now.
Historically speaking, it is difficult to prove someone of slander and libel.
Yes, slander being the spoken word, of course, and libel being the written word. Yeah.
It is very difficult to prove that, because you have to prove intent, and that's very difficult to prove on a legality term.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe why is this a Hail Mary from Dai? Possibly, we don't know.
It might be. I mean, Neil Theobald, I know he definitely still has an income right now from Temple University. I don't know if Hailong Dai does.
That's interesting. That's something we'll have to look into as well. But anyway, that's just another story we're going to continue to follow here, and that just about wraps it up here today for the district. Taylor, any final words before we get off air?
Hopefully next week we have brighter news.
Yeah, I was about to say it's a shame we have to end the show on such a
a sour note.
But nonetheless, keep it here for WHIP Radio. This is a district from Taylor Allen and John Cole. We will be back next week as we'll talk everything in the political realm, then here at the state and local level. Like you mentioned, hopefully some lighter topics.
Hopefully.
All right, stay tuned to WHIP Radio, Philadelphia's #1 college radio station.